On Christmas Eve, 2002, a 27-year-old woman vanished from her home in Modesto, California. She was 8 months pregnant. Her name was Laci Peterson, and the search for her would become one of the most watched missing persons cases in American history. 4 months later, her remains and those of her unborn son washed up on the shoreline of San Francisco Bay, just miles from where her husband told police he had gone fishing on the day she disappeared. Scott Peterson was arrested, tried, and convicted of 2 counts of murder. The jury sentenced him to death. More than 2 decades later, he is still behind bars, but he has never stopped fighting his conviction. His latest legal team, the Los Angeles Innocence Project, filed a habeas corpus petition claiming substantial new evidence proves his innocence. In April 2026, a California judge rejected every single one of their claims, and Laci's mother, Sharon Rocha, responded with 5 words that carried more than 20 years of grief. She said he is guilty, and that is it. So what exactly happened in this case? What evidence led 12 jurors to convict Scott Peterson? And why does this case keep coming back? Let us go back to the beginning. Laci Denise Rocha was born on May 4th, 1975, in Modesto, California. She grew up in the Central Valley, the agricultural heartland of the state. Her father, Dennis Rocha, ran a tractor rental service. Her mother, Sharon, later remarried a dairy farmer named Ron Gransky. Laci's stepfather sometimes called her Jabber Jaws as a kid because of how much she talked. Laci attended California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo, where she majored in ornamental horticulture. She had a passion for gardening, something she shared with her mother. In 1994, while still in college, she met Scott Peterson. He was studying agricultural business at the same university. They began dating and moved in together in 1996. On August 9th, 1997, they married. After college, the newlyweds opened a small restaurant in San Luis Obispo called The Shack. Scott cooked. Laci handled the decorating. Friends described them as the perfect couple. Around 1998, they moved to Modesto, where Scott took a job as a fertilizer salesman. Laci worked as a substitute teacher. They bought a 3-bedroom house on Covina Avenue in an upscale neighborhood. They decorated it with antiques and filled the yard with plants. By late 2002, Laci was 8 months pregnant with a boy she and Scott had planned to name Connor. She was due in February. She and her mother were close, talking on the phone nearly every day and meeting regularly for movies, lunch, and shopping. Sharon later confirmed she had spoken with Laci the evening of December 23rd. Everything appeared normal, but what investigators would uncover in the weeks and months ahead told a very different story. On December 24th, 2002, Christmas Eve, Laci Peterson was reported missing. Both Scott Peterson and Laci's stepfather, Ron Gransky, contacted Modesto police around 6 p.m. that evening. Scott told police he had last seen Laci that morning before leaving the house. He initially told a neighbor he was going to play golf, but his story to investigators was different. He said he had driven nearly 90 miles to the Berkeley Marina to go fishing alone in a small aluminum boat he had recently purchased, a boat his family did not even know he owned. When he returned home that evening, he said Laci was gone. Their golden retriever was in the backyard with its leash still on. Law enforcement launched a large-scale search immediately. Ground teams, canine units, helicopters, and water searches were all deployed. Investigators classified the case as high priority, given that Laci was 8 months pregnant, and the circumstances of her disappearance were concerning from the start. By December 28th, authorities had begun searching the waters near Berkeley Marina for the first time. On December 31st, Modesto police publicly shifted their focus. They acknowledged the case might involve foul play. Homicide detective John Bueller told reporters they had not ruled out other possibilities. On January 3, 2003, police took the unusual step of asking the public for help, verifying Scott Peterson's whereabouts in the days before Christmas. Laci's family grew increasingly frustrated. On January 17th, her family and friends held a news conference, demanding that Scott tell authorities everything he knew. Then, on January 24, 2003, the case cracked wide open. A 27-year-old Fresno massage therapist named Amber Frey held a press conference that stunned the nation. She revealed she had been in a romantic relationship with Scott Peterson. She said she met him on November 20, 2002, just over a month before Laci disappeared. A mutual friend had introduced them. Frey told reporters that Scott had told her he was unmarried. He told her his wife was already dead. She said those were his exact words to her before Laci ever went missing. Frey had contacted Modesto police on December 30th, 2002, after seeing news coverage of Laci's disappearance and realizing the connection. She agreed to become a police informant. From that point forward, she secretly recorded her phone conversations with Scott Peterson. The recordings would later become some of the most significant evidence in the entire case. Scott Peterson admitted to the affair publicly in early 2003, but denied any involvement in his wife's disappearance. He and Laci's family drifted apart as suspicion grew. On March 3, 2003, Modesto police officially reclassified the case. Laci Peterson was now believed to be the victim of a homicide. Then came April. On April 13, 2003, the remains of a male fetus washed ashore on a beach along San Francisco Bay. The following day, April 14th, the badly decomposed remains of a woman were found approximately 1 mile away near Point Isabel Regional Shoreline in Richmond, California. Even before DNA tests confirmed the identities, investigators were certain. Detective Al Brachini later recalled his reaction. He said Scott told him he was fishing at that marina, and that is exactly where the bodies surfaced. He believed it was premeditated and planned. Investigators already had a GPS tracker on Scott's vehicle. They knew he had traveled to San Diego, close to the Mexican border. On April 18, 2003, police arrested Scott Peterson at a golf course in the San Diego area. When they searched his car, investigators found over $15,000 in cash, 4 cell phones, his brother's driver's license, his sister's credit card, camping and survival gear, multiple changes of clothing, knives, rope. His hair had been bleached blonde. Prosecutors argued he was preparing to flee the country. The defense later said he was visiting family in San Diego and had changed his appearance because of relentless media attention. Here is something worth considering. When police arrested Scott Peterson, his wife's remains had just been found in the exact body of water where he claimed to have been fishing the day she disappeared. And he was found nearly 500 miles from home with cash, disguises, and someone else's identification. What do you make of that combination of facts? On April 21, 2003, Scott Peterson was arraigned. He pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of murder. First-degree murder for the death of Laci Peterson. Second-degree murder for the death of their unborn son, Connor. The charges carried special circumstances, meaning he could face the death penalty. Later that day, the DNA results came back. The remains were confirmed as Laci and Connor Peterson. On August 29, 2003, Laci and Connor were laid to rest in a private ceremony. The trial was moved from Modesto to Redwood City in San Mateo County because the media coverage had been so intense that finding an impartial local jury was considered nearly impossible. Jury selection began on March 4, 2004. A 6-man, 6-woman jury was seated on May 27th. 6 alternates were also selected. The trial officially began on June 1, 2004. The presiding judge was Alfred DeLucchi. The prosecution's case was built almost entirely on circumstantial evidence. No murder weapon was ever found. No crime scene was ever identified. No cause of death was ever determined due to the advanced decomposition of Laci's remains. But prosecutors argued the pattern of deception was overwhelming. They alleged that Scott Peterson's motive was to escape his marriage and avoid the responsibilities of fatherhood. They pointed to the affair with Amber Frey, which began just weeks before Laci vanished. They argued that Scott secretly purchased the aluminum boat and used it to dispose of Laci's body in San Francisco Bay on Christmas Eve. The bodies of Laci and Connor were recovered in the same area of the bay where Scott told police he had been fishing. Some of Laci's hair was found on a pair of pliers inside the boat. But the turning point in the trial came on August 10, 2004, when Amber Frey took the stand. Over the course of several days of testimony, 12 hours of secretly recorded phone conversations between Frey and Scott were played for the jury. In those recordings, Scott lied repeatedly and elaborately. During one call, made while a candlelight vigil for Laci was underway in Modesto, Scott told Frey he was on a business trip in Paris. He described fireworks at the Eiffel Tower. His pregnant wife had been missing for days. Phone records also showed that Scott had called Frey hundreds of times after Laci's disappearance, contradicting his earlier claims that Frey had pursued him. Frey's attorney, Gloria Allred, later described her testimony as substantial in securing the conviction. Allred said Amber came across as one of the most credible people you could ever hear testify. And Scott Peterson on those recordings came across as one of the biggest liars one could ever hear. The defense, led by high-profile attorney Mark Garagos, offered an alternative theory. Garagos argued that Laci had been abducted by individuals connected to a burglary that occurred across the street from the Peterson home around the same time she disappeared. The theory was that Laci may have witnessed the crime and was taken as a result. Police had investigated those suspects. Stephen Todd and Donald Pierce were arrested for the burglary, but investigators cleared them of any involvement in Laci's disappearance. Garagos also pointed out that Scott had no history of violence, no prior criminal record, no documented incidents of domestic abuse. Detective Craig Grogan confirmed on the stand that Scott had told him he had never been in a physical fight in his life, but the jury was not persuaded. On November 12, 2004, after approximately 7 hours of deliberation by the final panel of jurors, the verdict was read. Scott Peterson was found guilty. First-degree murder for the death of Laci Peterson. Second-degree murder for the death of Connor Peterson. Scott stared straight ahead and showed no visible emotion as the verdict was announced. None of the jurors appeared to look back at him. Laci's mother, Sharon Rocha, sobbed in the gallery. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of several hundred people had gathered. When word of the verdict spread, they broke into cheers and applause. The penalty phase began on November 30th. Prosecutors called 4 of Laci's family members to testify. The defense called 39 witnesses over 7 days, including Scott's mother, Jackie Peterson, who used a portable oxygen tank and tearfully asked the jury to see the good in her son. On December 13, 2004, the jury recommended the death penalty. On March 16, 2005, Judge DeLucchi formally sentenced Scott Peterson to death by lethal injection. He was transferred to San Quentin State Prison and placed on death row. But the legal fight was far from over. In August 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned Scott Peterson's death sentence. The court ruled that the trial judge had improperly dismissed potential jurors, who said they personally disagreed with the death penalty but were willing to follow the law and impose it if the evidence warranted it. The court also ordered a review of whether juror misconduct had denied Peterson a fair trial. The focus was on juror number 7, a woman named Rochelle Nice. Nice, who was nicknamed Strawberry Shortcake during the trial because of her red hair, was accused of failing to disclose important information during jury selection. Specifically, in the year 2000, Nice had sought a restraining order against her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend because she feared for her unborn child. She was 4.5 months pregnant at the time, yet when asked on the jury questionnaire whether she had ever been a crime victim or been involved in a lawsuit, Nice answered no to both questions. Peterson's defense team argued that Nice had hidden motives and was biased from the start. They pointed out that after the trial, Nice co-authored a book about the case with 6 other jurors. She also sent dozens of letters to Peterson in prison, asking him why he had killed his family. In December 2022, San Mateo County Superior Court Judge Anne Christine Masulo ruled that Nice's answers on the questionnaire were false in certain respects. But the judge concluded that the false answers were the result of good faith, misunderstanding, and sloppiness, not pre-existing bias against Peterson. The request for a new trial based on juror misconduct was denied. Peterson was resentenced in December 2021 to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was later moved off death row and is currently housed at Mule Creek State Prison in California. That appeal regarding juror misconduct is still pending before the California Supreme Court. But the juror misconduct claim was not the only legal avenue Peterson's team pursued. In November 2023, the Los Angeles Innocence Project took over his case. The LAIP is a separate organization from the New York City-based Innocence Project. In 2024, they filed a motion requesting DNA retesting on 14 pieces of evidence. Judge Elizabeth Hill denied 13 of the 14 requests. She granted retesting on only one item, a piece of duct tape found on Laci's clothing during autopsy. Then, on August 4, 2025, the LAIP filed a habeas corpus petition in San Mateo County Superior Court. The petition raised 14 separate claims. Among them were allegations that new oceanographic research showed the bodies could not have drifted from where Scott claimed to have been fishing to where they were found. The LAIP argued the bodies were most likely placed in the water near the Albany Bulb, a peninsula accessible by car and foot. The petition also claimed that the prosecution had suppressed evidence related to a burned van found near the Peterson home, which had a mattress with apparent stains inside, and it challenged the claim that Scott secretly purchased the boat, arguing that Laci and Scott had bought it together. The petition included a 140-page declaration written by Peterson himself. On April the 27th, 2026, Judge Elizabeth Hill denied the petition in its entirety. Her 116-page ruling dismissed all 14 claims. She wrote that they were procedurally barred, meritless, or both. She found nothing new, admissible, or material in the evidence the LAIP presented. Stanislaus County District Attorney Jeff Logero issued a statement saying the ruling showed the process worked. He described the petition as nothing more than recycled, repackaged, and rebranded arguments. He said Laci, Connor, and their family deserve the finality that justice promised them. The LAIP's deputy director, Hannah Brown, disagreed. She said the ruling demonstrates a profound misunderstanding and misapplication of the law, and announced plans to appeal to a higher court. As of July 2026, that appeal is expected to move forward. On April 1, 2004, President George W. Bush signed the Unborn Victims of Violence Act into federal law. The legislation, which carried the alternate title of Laci and Connor's Law, made it a separate federal offense to harm or kill a fetus during the commission of a violent crime. The law was named in honor of Laci and Connor Peterson. Sharon Rocha, Laci's mother, had advocated for the legislation. She wrote that adoption of any law that did not recognize her unborn grandson as a separate victim would be a painful blow. She said Connor lived, he had a name, he was loved, and his life was violently taken from him before he ever saw the sun. Through all of this, Sharon Rocha has remained a constant presence. She has attended hearing after hearing, year after year. In a letter read at a court hearing, she wrote that she and her family endure the pain of reliving Laci's murder every time Peterson files a new claim. She said Scott Peterson continually claims to have new evidence that clears him, but none has ever been produced. Speaking to People magazine ahead of the A&E documentary, Rocha was even more direct. She said it is never ending. It is like ripping the scab off a wound every time. She said all they are looking for right now is to throw everything against the wall and hope that something sticks. She said the bottom line is, he is guilty, and that is it. She added that maybe she should not sound so harsh, but she is tired. Very, very, very tired. Rocha declined to comment on the documentary or on the judge's ruling. Let us talk about where things stand right now. Scott Peterson is 53 years old. He is serving life without parole at Mule Creek State Prison. His 2004 conviction has been upheld through more than 2 decades of post-conviction litigation. The LAIP plans to appeal Judge Hill's April 2026 ruling to a higher California court. A separate petition regarding juror Rochelle Nice remains pending before the California Supreme Court. No murder weapon has ever been found. No crime scene was ever identified. The medical examiner was unable to determine a cause of death due to the condition of the remains. Those are verified facts. But it is also a verified fact that 12 jurors reviewed the evidence and found Scott Peterson guilty. Every court that has reviewed this case since has reached the same conclusion. Do you think the circumstantial evidence was enough to convict? Or does the absence of a murder weapon and a definitive cause of death leave room for doubt? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This case has been argued in courtrooms, debated in documentaries, and discussed at kitchen tables for over 23 years. And based on the legal filings still pending, it is not over yet. If you made it this far, consider subscribing to this channel. We cover in-depth true crime cases just like this one. Hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and you will never miss a new documentary when it drops. 23 years after Laci Peterson disappeared on Christmas Eve morning, every court that has examined this case has upheld the verdict. But for the woman who lost her daughter and her grandson, no ruling has ever brought them back, and no amount of new filings has ever made the pain stop.